Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a very special spoiler discussion. Today, we are talking the Acolyte Episode 6, Teach/Corrupt, which is now streaming on Disney Plus and directed by Hanel Culpepper. And as you can see, I am flying solo today. Life gets in the way. It's just myself. Sam is not very well. Phil will be back next week, and Dave is going to be watching the series a little bit later on. So, following on from Episode 5, it leaves us in quite a predicament to follow the episode up. So this will be a shorter one. Once again, the episode was just past 30 minutes long, but with one person talking through the spoiler details. Of course, the video is going to be a little bit quicker, but I do want to hear from people that are watching at home. So please do comment below with your thoughts on the Acolyte, your thoughts on the series so far, if it's working for you, if it's not working for you, things you're enjoying, things maybe you're not enjoying. I do want to hear your thoughts on it. So please do bring them up. And if you're curious about other videos, what else we're working on, you can go get us on our social medias, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. That can put you to our Facebook, Letterboxd, Instagram, Twitter. I also link to our Redbubble store, which is also in the description. But as I said, we are here talking episode 6, and I might as well cast our eyes back to a week ago. This time we were talking episode 5. To be honest, I know I said this in a video tape yesterday, one of the best live action Star Wars TV episodes there's been so far. Right up there with some of the best episodes from Andor, with some of the best from The Mandalorian. I absolutely loved it. It's the only episode of the series so far I've watched multiple times. I did say last week on the first viewing was on a train. I was luckily back at home today, although weirdly enough, it was watching this at 4 a.m, having just got back from an airport. So it was quite a wild experience watching it that early in the morning. I think it goes up at 2 a.m. here in the UK time. So obviously no spoilers from myself that came out online, no spoilers from other people. And obviously I went to bed soon after to catch up for sleep for the rest of the day. But I'm going to be splitting this episode a little bit different to normally. Normally we go through the big moments, but seeing as we had quite a compact episode split into 3 storylines, I'm going to go through each of those, and I guess we'll be talking about the reactions from last week and what that's led into, alongside myself maybe speculating at what is to come in future episodes, or maybe next week. There are 2 episodes left after today. I'm very excited to see where the series goes, and I guess we kind of want to kickstart with the storyline that I am absolutely really curious about at the moment. We have, of course, Qimir and Osha, following on from last week, where he, finds her in the forest, realizes obviously Mae swapped them over. He's still looking for his people, and wake up with her in the unknown planet, which looks a lot like Skellig Michael, which looks a lot like Anchto Island. Maybe it was filmed there. It genuinely looks like part of the island I went to when I visited in 2017, the lower parts of it. The fact there were barrier and railings up as well, which is what the island has, I'm convinced somewhere that it could be the same planet. Maybe not the Jedi Temple, maybe a neighboring one. I do not know. But I absolutely loved seeing this shot on location. I know I've criticized some of the Disney Plus shows quite a bit for the overuse of the volume. I know that Andor, of course, built practical sets, built cities for people to shoot in, shot on location at places like Blackpool, all around London. So it's great to see this one in clearly such a real location, the one that looked amazing and that kind of made their story tangent somewhat more curious compared to, say, this is on a green screen or this is in a volume, this is there. The fact they were somewhere, I thought, really helps enhance what they were going through. And I guess this is going to be a talking point. I've not seen too many people talking about the episode today, by the normal people who I've seen sort of tweet in the morning, like especially the Americans. Maybe because I was online in the middle of the night UK time, I don't know, but not as many people are talking about it, especially understandable given what happened last week. But this story I'm very intrigued by, because now we're learning a lot more about Qimir. We're learning more about his past. The swimming sequence is probably going to be part of meme culture. I saw a really funny tweet where they're like, look at the audio description, and it's something like he has a scar on his back, on his well-toned body, or something great like that. And I'm kind of not on Qimir's side, obviously. He's the villain. He's a Sith. He's luring somebody in to gain his student. There's a lot to read into that, and I'll be talking about the Osha and Mae parallel as this stream goes on. But what really caught me off guard with this is the idea of freedom that he's giving Osha, that he's encouraging her to lean into that dark side. He's encouraging her to be with him, to be free. but ultimately that freedom can only lead you into his one direction. And I'm very curious about how it's going to play out with those two. His backstory is, I think, going to be the big talking point. The scar on his back, if they didn't think it was important by showing it once, they then showed it again later on. It was then brought up in conversation later on. There's some really cool theories doing the round, and I'll get to one of them toward the end of this video, but it is clear that Qimir is setting up Osha to be his new apprentice, or trying to make her his new apprentice, and we may or may not see her starting to lean in toward that. And I love these parallels that, you know, he was once a Jedi, a long time before she, of course, was around. But that indicates, and he's still fairly young, that indicates that at some point he had a master. The master could be unknown. You go back to episode 5, how he speaks to Sol, and he sort of implies, you know, you really didn't recognize me. It does make me think that he would have maybe been a Padawan or a youngling when not the events took place, but he could have been, I'd imagine, like a Padawan, let's say late teenager, early 20s, maybe when Sol was first finding Osha. So I do think we might see Qimir crop up again in the future. And then we're also left with a very obvious question. Who could his master be? Who did he not talk about when he said the implication of being stabbed in the back with the wound? Was that his Jedi master, or was that his Sith master? Is it his current Sith master? These are all questions that people are going to be asking. This is where the speculation is going to come into overdrive. And as much as I've said of this show, that I do think this one would have been supported a bit more by being released all at once, it's giving us another week to keep thinking about what is his background, who is his mentor, is he not with his mentor? Some theories doing around still with the first Knight of Ren, that he could have been a Sith that was betrayed by his master for them to get a new apprentice. I love that idea. Something he could be starting his own thing. Others think he's still the apprentice looking for his acolyte ready to try and overthrow his master. And I've got to say, I'm going to be happy with almost any of those. I would love to get a bit more of his backstory. I really think we're going to get it in the next 2 episodes. Judging off the ending of today, it does feel like we are going to get an episode next week where we're going back again and we're going to find out a little bit more about the events that took place with Osha and Mae in the fire. We're going to get some clarity of that with Sol. But suddenly, Qimir's backstory is now as important to me as the rest of it. And the helmet that once again makes an appearance that they released for pre-order last week. I believe it's the pre-order sold out in America. I could be wrong, but the helmet looks great. For people crying about cortosis, we got an explanation for it this week, and I love the idea it has this sort of Magneto effect where, you know, it connects you further to the Force. They made a comment that the Jedi, the Padawans, would use this later on as time went by. Not as later on as time went by. The Padawans use it in the Jedi Temple, which is great. When you think of episode 2, you've got the younglings in their training, that it blocks out the senses. It leaves you to be alone. And I really like the idea. And in the fact that it's essentially got slit eyes in the helmet makes all his combat moves not just so much more impressive last week, but seeing that he was able to dual wearing that really shows that he was connecting with, I guess, because of the dark side of the Force for that duel, and obviously making light work of everybody else that popped up. We've got Travis saying, how's it going? It's going very well. Someone mentioned that the win like Venestra's whip, which is odd given the reveal of it here. Yes, I'm going to talk about that at the end because that's the one doing the rounds. And as someone that hasn't read anything from the High Republic, I know Venestra is a character that has been in books at some points. I believe maybe a century apart. Someone can correct me, please, if I'm wrong. I'm sure Phil would. But it certainly goes on that. I mean, should we talk about Venestra next? Because as I said, it's a little bit shorter this week. It's just myself, so I don't necessarily have people to go off and bounce off and see where the conversation goes. But with Venestra, we'll talk about Sol at the end. Yeah, that's the better one. I love the idea that the Jedi bodies were still there. And this is a really strange thing for me to say on stream. And people need to follow me for this. Yes, it's Star Wars. People overanalyze Star Wars, myself included. I think I joked last week that what if they go back, burn the bodies, get rid of the bodies, get rid of the evidence. But I like the fact we get some immediate peril where Sol has reported that everyone's died by him, that we've got the comm problems. We've got him on his side piece with Mae. He jets off, doesn't follow the orders to sort out whatever he needs to sort out himself. And I really love that this leaves us with another squad of Jedi Venestra leading it to find these dead bodies, seeing you're just, the neck there, poor Jackie's dead, the beheaded Jedi, the red cloaks who were so expertly hidden by trees last week for the beheading and were once again hidden by trees today. I love that implied violence. Yes, that's psychotic of me, but to get that in a Disney series, to get that in live action Star Wars, I didn't really think we'd be able to get that. And I know that's, again, sadistic for myself, but I like that we got to see the horror of the other Jedi's face. And for those that I guess we'll talk about the Sith dynamic, who could have done this, who is powerful, I do like this idea that the Sith aren't around. And obviously we're still figuring out, is Qimir the Sith? Is he not the Sith? Is he Knight of Ren? Is he his own thing? He says he's looking for his freedom. But man, what freedom is he really looking for? To want to be able just to kill and murder people? Who knows what the freedom is that he seeks? But I love the idea. He says, my rules are done by the Jedi. I can't exist because of the Jedi. They set all the rules and boundaries. And meanwhile, we're getting Venestra, who isn't just somewhat confirmed. And I'll bring that comment once more by Travis. The wound looks like Venestra's whip. The theory doing the round, for anyone that hasn't read it, is that Qimir could have been the apprentice of Venestra. Could that have been her whip that had that effect on him? I like the idea. Again, I don't know Venestra. I don't know the backstory. We've got a great comment. Again, the High Republic's 200 years before Phantom Menace. Acolyte's 100 years before. She's 60 when we meet her in the High Republic, so about 116 now. I guess there could be a lot of character evolution. You'd hope so with the century passing between them. No idea what she's like in the book. But the idea that she might not be this clean Jedi after all, that we know that Sol is going through a lot of stuff. Could she be a former master of Qimir? Could she have responsibility in the path he ended up taking? I quite like that idea. I don't know the implications of the High Republic, and I will sit there and once again say that, like episode 4 and then what happened a week after, I'm very okay with the idea of everyone being offed that does know things. I don't know if the Jedi that was talking to is her apprentice or if it's just a Jedi that just happens to be working it. I don't really know how that sort of thing works, but the concern they have and that they immediately target Sol as it has to be a Jedi powerful enough, that is reiterating once more that the Sith are not known, that maybe people don't even know of the Sith's existence, as in even in Legend they don't know of the Sith. And I think it's a really interesting idea for them to maybe play it the last 2 episodes. I do have one slight issue, and it's not potentially even an issue. It might be done in 2 weeks. They made a big deal of the lightsaber whip being in the episodes. I know, again, that's part of the High Republic. Just to whip a fly in half, I hope we're going to get a bit more than that in the next few weeks. Doesn't need to be Qamir's origin for me, him being whipped on the back like Davy Jones and Bootstrap Bill Turner, but it is something I'm curious by seeing that in action from a practical standpoint rather than just fly swatting. That being said, we're 2 weeks away from having this resolution, from knowing what is going to happen, but I'm very curious by the idea that this could all be put on Sol. They might put him forward as not a dark Jedi, a Jedi that has fallen of immense power. We know that he's got stuff going on in the background. He's going to open up with true honesty about what happened all those years ago, and the seeds are being planted for a Jedi cover-up or him taking full responsibility. Right, I want to kind of jump in that before I start talking about Sol himself. Carl says, was the unknown planet Anchto from The Last Jedi? I would love it to be. I don't think it is, but I do think they probably shot at Skellig, or they've shot on one of the surrounding islands. There's a lot of islands there. If anyone's been, you obviously get the boat from Carrie, and it's like 30, 40 minutes, and you pass a lot of islands like that, a bit like King Kong, Skull Island, some really cool stuff, some really weird stuff. I'm convinced they shot it on that island. Ron Mistars has put the planet wasn't Anchto. That's absolutely fair if it's not. Could it be a neighboring planet? I don't know. But I am very curious. And I love the fact the placement of the text, because people were crying when this was Coruscant a few weeks ago, but to outright call it unknown planet makes me and it felt like it was centered. It wasn't just it popped up and disappeared. It felt like they had to elongate the unknown planet, yet it was so familiar to everybody that obviously has seen the sequel trilogy. I would love to find out a bit more. I'm sad with stuff like that, and it is also obviously because I've been to Skellig, Michael, so it's that great. It's not just a couple of films that were shot here. It could be a series completely different. I loved the whole vibe. I love that he makes a comment that the ship's on a part away, that you can let the tide go out to get it, or you can go swim and get there themselves. But I'm very curious about that planet. It must be pretty nice going for a swim. in those sort of weird that looked warm rock bath things. I don't know, but it's a very cool base. I like it. Ron's also put, I think it's Bell damn next to what looked like a vein of cortosis or in the cave, which Osha put on the helmet. Yes, there was cortosis or in the cave. Quite smart way to mold his helmet. I know I like sad things. I like seeing them repairing the helmet. That war-torn helmet that's been in battle was a great concept. I like the idea of cortosis, and as I said earlier, I like that the eyesight is so limited that he must have been truly connected to the dark side of the Force to wipe out all those people in episode 5. And just the imagery of Osha, that was one of the thumbnail ideas, but it didn't look as good as the two I had. The fact she's put the helmet on, it's not a trap, it's that lure to it. Maybe it's the first step in her new journey, who knows, but I really like how Qimir is trying to bring her to his side, to be nearer to him. The sequence of him, pointing the blade on himself and her not igniting it until a little bit later, I thought it was a great scene. There is clearly darkness in her, and he is going to make it his job to promise her so much freedom that she turns to him. And the caveat of that, we then go to the person she does care about, Jedi Master Sol, who is with Mae on the Parent Trap Plan B, given the events of House of the Dragon. Let's see how it worked out in the Acolyte. And it's safe to say it didn't work. Although Sol took his time to realize it was her. She was pushing and pushing about questions. I like the fact Mae was trying to find out what had happened all that time ago, that she was pushing to get the answers to the questions that she needs answering, knowing her sister's alive. This is one of the targets she had to kill Sol. She had ample of opportunity to do it. There are sequences where she has the blade, but she does not go through it. She wants to know what happens, and so do we, the viewer. But what we get is some incredible acting by Lee Jung-jae. And I'm once again reiterating the fact that he learnt English in the space of 3 months to do the show. The commitment to a role such as this, yes, someone can say, oh, it's an actor they're paid, well, they're the best translators, blah, blah, blah. The fact that he's able to not only learn the language, but to give the performance such as this, where he's grappling with grief, his own identity, the betrayal of his order himself, it is a phenomenal performance, and it is already making him one of the most interesting Jedi characters we've had. And I really hope we do get him for another 2 episodes. It's obviously clear that next week we're going to find out what has truly happened, that he is going to be honest to her. The fact he jetted off and went straight into hyperspace rather than wait for Venestra makes me think we might get a return to the planet from episode 3. He might want to go somewhere where it has that familiarity, where he will open up. Maybe he'll even not necessarily sacrifice himself. I know Tom and Baratheon took that vial, but I'm really curious about what it is he has hidden to protect himself and to protect others with. And ultimately, it could end up being one of the biggest betrayals to Osha, someone that he does care for. And we know that Jedi shouldn't have an attachment, but when he sort of grabs her and then goes for the hug, it is the fear he had from the encounter with Qimir, which I thought was again an incredible moment. And when you think about live action styles, you think about films, one of the beauties of television is that you spend more time, obviously, with it, that you can elongate those moments that you wouldn't necessarily have time to. You can't have a sequence and take 5-10 minutes breather to pause and follow the characters, their response to that, whilst managing a Star Wars film across 2 hours of gutting to get to A, B, and C. And I love that this show has given us this episode today where it's almost a breather before we're heading into a 2-part finale, I guess. We're going to get the character to speed, plant new character ideas, take them into new directions, and just the subtle moments on the ship I thought was a really interesting way to do it. Lee's per Sol makes it seem like whatever he says is enough to let Mae go. I could see that too. And there is an irony that he's got her locked up in binders, whilst he is the freer of the two compared to Qimir, who has essentially given Osha the luxury of a planet to do as she pleases with, whilst trying to lure her. And obviously those freedoms are 2 complete opposites of themselves. We've got a quick comment by Ron saying, I think David Harewood will either play Plagueis or Darth Tenebrel. Sol is a Sol, that's for sure. The Darth Tenebrel stuff is interesting. This is picking up a lot of steam. Now, I've been trying to read as much into him as I can, i.e. new canon. There is like a comic photo of him, but my understanding is he hasn't ever physically appeared. It is just known through the Plagueis novel that he was like a ship designer, that he obviously had this voice thing, and obviously he's a Bith. For those that don't know what that is, that's the species of the Cantina bands. If Tenebras is to be in it, I will put myself out there and say something maybe controversial. I don't care if they change his species. I know Plagueis is locked in, and he's locked in within canon of what he is, but there's so little out there about Darth Tenebras. If he's got a ventilator and he's the Cantina band, cool. But I think that's a very tough sell to the general audience, to people that maybe aren't familiar with that. It could come across somewhat ridiculous. But if David Harewood is in it, we are obviously going to see him at some point. I am very curious the role he plays. Could he be the big bad? I do not know. And I guess we'll find out in the next 2 weeks. But I am in a position where I'm curious to see what they're going to do. I wouldn't mind it if he's playing himself and he's in armor and he's a human. I wouldn't mind it if he's playing an alien. As long as it compensates the story and the character developments and the character actions of maybe Qimir or with Osha, with Mae, with Plagueis, with Tabor. The power of 2 is mentioned today, which is very interesting given the episode 9 dyad speculation that's gone around. I know Star Wars Explained did a really good video on that as well. But I'm curious about who David Harewood will play and when he crops up. And I just know, based off how they handled the final shot of episode 4 and episode 5, when we are going to get this second Sith. Is it a second Sith? Is it the correct individual Sith Lord? Who knows? You just know it's going to be carnage, and you know that the presentation is going to be on point. And that's something that Leslye Headland does so well as the showrunner with the series, is that the reveals and what she's influenced by fits the narrative like a glove. It fits in with the Star Wars ideology. You got to think this is the prequel to the prequels, and we have someone whose favorite Star Wars films, The Phantom Menace, showrunning this, and that's such a blessing. And this isn't a criticism of the sequels or whatnot, but the generation of filmmakers that came through that were so clearly influenced by the original trilogy. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way, at all. But it's nice to see people openly talking about the prequels. No, these are my favorite films. These what influenced me. And now my Star Wars will have those influences. They spoke about the choreography last week, and we got to see that delivered. In the same way that when JJ made episode 7, he spoke about the choreography and says, we wanted to bring it back to its roots. These are 2 people that are outright trying to kill each other. That very much worked for episode 7. And what has happened in the Acolyte episode 5 has worked for the Acolyte episode 5. Different eras, different people dueling, different training, all that sort of stuff. It's very cool. And if there is to be another duel in this series, maybe we're going to get Sol against Qimir again. Maybe we're going to get Venestra popping up with the whip. Who knows? There's a lot of possibility, but it looks like we're going to have these 3 storylines from today come together in a couple of weeks to maybe make for an interesting finale, hopefully an interesting finale. But it's just one of them where I've very much enjoyed watching this show week to week. I know not everybody has, and there are rightful criticisms of this show. I'm still not fully sold on the High Republic as an era itself. I know that era has a lot of fans and people have followed it for many years. I've always just struggled with the idea from a narrative viewpoint that the Jedi is at their prime and there's no Sith, and I'm okay with that. But I like that we're able to get toward the end of the High Republic to see what the show is doing and pulling forward strings for what we know is the prequel trilogy in the main series of films. So I've got a very different viewpoint to others on that, and I'm sure that we're going to see the High Republic explored for many, many more years to come. I know Phase 3 is starting soon on the books and the comics. I know that obviously we've had the series, we've had it pop up in Jedi Survivor. It's been a very successful era for Lucasfilm. And I think like what they do with the originals, like what they do with the prequels, and probably, I guess, soonish the sequels of what they've been planting The Mandalorian, we will get this era continued development, even if they move on to, say, the Old Republic, which my theory is that the Old Republic has always been next in line. Since the day they announced the High Republic as this Lucasfilm story panel that's gone on for many, many years, talking about how they've got the schedule in place, that they've got 3 eras, not 3 eras, 3... I've got it's like Infinity War, isn't it? 3 phases of the High Republic. I think right now Lucasfilm is mapping out what they're going to do with the Old Republic. I can't sit here and say films, TV, comics, games, whatever, but I just know if they've had a conscious story group working on the High Republic for many years before the High Republic was a thing, I think they would be doing the same to the Old Republic. And when they take that on, obviously it's a very, very different entity. The High Republic is new. It's allowed to be new. It's not been explored before. the Old Republic does have the old expanded universe connections, and a lot of those ideas did pull through within the Clone Wars and within the Star Wars films that followed. So there's a lot of open doors for Lucasfilm to develop these eras in. And the High Republic, as I said, it's not for me at the moment, but this show is, and I'm really enjoying how it's coming together. And as I said, 2 more weeks. I hope they nail the landing. I hope that the individual character arcs are resolved. I mentioned Sol, that we're seeing, the grief is starting to bring out the weight of his actions and what's gone wrong. I can't wait to find out what he did, what's been covered up. Have the Jedi been naive? Have the Jedi been playing the political spectrum against each other? We got some conversation about a senator earlier, and the Jedi always being this sort of beacon of person. So it's really interesting to see what is set up. We've got another combo on. The scars on Qimir's back look like they may be from a whip. That's what a lot of people have said. If it's not a whip, it's been quite a slice and dice. So I am very intrigued. It could be lightning for all we know, something we've not seen in quite a few years. So there's a lot of potential what it could be. And I just really hope, again, heading into the final 2 episodes, that we have character resolutions, that we find out what's going to happen with Qimir, we find out what's going to happen with Mae, with Osha, with Sol, maybe Venestra. Maybe we'll see the Jedi High Council right at the end. Maybe we'll see Ki-Adi-Mundi pop up again. It's going to be an interesting 2 weeks, and I'm excited to see them, to talk about them. As I said, now I'm flying solo this week, and this episode is a little bit shorter than normal, but that's pretty much all I can say. It was another 30-minute episode. It was a great episode for character development and setting up the final 2 episodes. And I don't really have too much more to go off of with that. So I'm going to sort of round out with this one. I know it's been a little bit shorter today, but I do want to hear from people at home. Comment below your thoughts on the Acolyte. Thank you to everyone that's been commenting along so far tonight. If you've got any other questions, I will answer them before I sign the stream off. But if not, we've got a lot of other videos coming out. We know we're in July now. We've had our monthly stream yesterday where we spoke about what we watched in June. There's a fair few new releases coming out this month. Deadpool Wolverine's, of course, the biggest one. We've got some new release films. There's a new, I forgot the Eddie Murphy one that came out today. Beverly Hills Cop films on Netflix today. Will I watch that? Maybe. I've got a week off work from today. I've got a lot of films to catch up with. I've got a massive Lego set to build. You can see in the corner of my screen. So I'm going to have a nice chilled week. Get some stuff watched, get Star Wars watched next Wednesday. I'll be able to wake up in the morning and watch the Acolyte without having to worry about spoilers. I can keep my phone switched off. I cannot wait. But this is going to do it for today. So once again, thank you all for watching, for commenting, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.